Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you should subscribe, you should listen, check those guys out. Obviously, support all of the Pistons content creation, but specifically DBB and what Wes and Blake are doing. And go ahead and support Omari and myself. Subscribe to the Detroit Free Press. Read Omari's work. If you haven't, come over to the Motor City Hoops Substack, where free content, free subscription. I have notes, analysis, video breakdown over there. Some more stuff coming. I think I have a couple people writing some NBA trade deadline stuff. NBA draft stuff will come, all of that. So make sure you're supporting all of the work we're doing and hit the like, subscribe, share, all of those buttons as well as you're watching this live or after the fact. Real quick, Order of the Blazing Horse says, what up, Doe? Appreciate your support. Derek Brown, congrats to Omari. I was listening to you on the radio about 2 weeks ago. Congrats, my guys. So, Derek, thank you. Derek, we will get to your question a little bit later. We are going to start off. I will not talk about any of this, but Omari, there was an unfortunate loss last night, and it wasn't just the Pistons game. Lions season come to an end. Your thoughts here. I'll give you the floor for however you long want to talk about this. Detroit Lions unfortunately lose in the opening game of the playoffs for them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, not that long. Like, I always joke about how it was tough for me to like truly buy in to like this Lions era, just because I'm just so used to the ground falling from under you. And like last night's game was just basically the game that I thought was going to come at some point over the past month, just since they have nobody healthy on defense. Like, they were 15-2, but they were not the 15-2 team that they should have been, because you're missing all your key guys on defense. And at some point, you're going to run into a team that could just score at will. And the Commanders are a good team. I mean, they have a great quarterback. They probably have the best rookie quarterback since who knows. They played a great game. Lions had some uncharacteristic mistakes. Obviously couldn't stop anybody. Yeah, long story short, like, that's just the game that I thought was going to come at some point. They lost so many guys on defense that just realistically, if they had won this game, like, I don't know how you compete against some of these like other teams with who they have on defense. And fun season. They get all their key guys back next year. I know in the NFL there's always a lot of panic about, well, maybe that was our last shot, but there are also teams who can sustain being good for long periods of time, and the Lions still have a lot of key guys. So we'll see what happens. But fun season, best Lions season of my lifetime. Still, it's cool to be watching a team that gets playoff buys and can win playoff games now. So they've certainly made a lot of progress in a short amount of time, and we'll see what happens next year. But overall, fun season.
Yeah, listen, I watch one team. I don't have time to watch a whole lot of other stuff, so I don't have a whole lot of thoughts other than, I mean, when you lose a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, who may be the best defensive player in the league, that's going to hurt your defense, along with all of the other names. Yeah. And then my other thought was, I told you guys this morning, I follow Schefter on Twitter just to keep up with stuff. He tweeted out the guys the Lions have as free agents this summer. And again, maybe there's some names there I'm just not super familiar with and what roles they played. But a lot of the names I know are super impactful for the Detroit Lions were not in that tweet. So it seems like they're bringing back some really, really good players. And it's just about, to me in the NFL, giving yourself a chance year in and year out. And so I know it sucks the day after, but I feel like they were really good this year. And that's what happens in the playoffs sometimes. So let's go ahead and get to the Pistons, who themselves, after obviously, going a couple games over 500, we talked about this, Omari, the tough stretch was coming, right? Like, this end of the January stretch was the games we've seen, the Pacers and the Suns. It doesn't get any easier, guys. Tomorrow it's the Rockets, then the Hawks, then you have the Magic with Paolo back, then you have the Cavs, then the Pacers again, and then the Dallas Mavericks. This doesn't get any easier. And we've seen them lose back-to-back games now, Pacers and Suns. I'm not saying like the world's falling or whatever, but what are your thoughts right now? We always kind of open this with the vibes. What are the vibes now as we've seen this team lose 2 straight? And maybe this is an episode to get not negative, but kind of talk about some of the things that they're struggling with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you lose two in a row, to teams that you had already defeated this year. But obviously, still two really good teams, right? Like Book and KD put up 35 and 36 points. That's going to be tough, especially when you're down a little bit of scoring, and like that Pacers game was fun, chippy, but like again, like that's a good Pacers team, and the Pistons just weren't quite there. So, this is probably the first like 3 or 4 day stretch and 3.5 weeks where it was kind of like like back to reality a little bit. Like
Yep.
not the winning streak wasn't reality, but it's just more so like you're still playing good teams every single night, and like that margin for error is still pretty slim. And yeah, like last 2 games are really the 2 games where in my mind I'm like they missed Jaden Ivey tonight. Like it's just some
Yeah.
nights you need an additional score on the floor to put some points up, and like they just didn't have it. But this team is still, I mean, in the grand scheme, like they were in both of those games. It's not like they got blown out. I think the areas they struggled are pretty predictable based on the makeup of this roster, right? With all Kate is being asked to do. And they've got some tough games coming up. So it's like we said on our last episode, like by the trade deadline, we'll have a very clear idea of where this team actually is. And right now, clearly there's somewhere between probably 30, 32, and 42 win team, somewhere in that range. So we'll see. But yeah, the NBA is still really deep, really talented. They still clearly have some holes to fill. And yeah, I think these last 2 games have kind of illustrated where that gap still is, right?
And the thing is, Detroit is good enough now where teams don't rest all their dudes. That was what was so impressive about that Knicks win. They went into New York against a fully healthy Knicks team. I just feel like even the game on Saturday against the Suns, I know Bradley Beal didn't play, but that seems like a game in the past where Booker or KD would take the night off, right? Like this Detroit team doesn't get that anymore. And just to like, listen, I don't want to take anything away, but this is the games they won during that stretch. They beat Orlando without Paolo. He still wasn't back. They beat Charlotte. They did beat the Timberwolves. Good win, right? Then they beat the Blazers. Then they beat the Nets. Then the Raptors with the loss to the Warriors in there. And then the most impressive one was that win at the Knicks. So I'm not, again, this is, to me, it is a little bit of a reality where I think we got into this, oh man, like maybe they're a top 6 seed in the East. Maybe they're a well above 500 team. And now we're starting to see where this isn't bad. Listen, they're still above where I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to win less than 30 games this year, and they're already at 21. So, like, I'm going to end up being wrong, it looks like. But I think what we're seeing is maybe it's not quite the jump where we thought it was going to be. So, I think this is going to be a lot of good information. I think we're also starting to see, like, hey, Jay Nivey or a second dude. And we will talk about the second dude conversation in just a second. Greetings from Poland. I am
Love
offended.
it.
Medics Man says greetings from Poland and then felt the need in parentheses to put Europe like we didn't know where Poland was. This hurts my heart. I am a words of affirmation, and I feel like I just got told I was not very smart. Like this hurts. Omari, does this hurt you? It hurts me.
I'm gonna give Medax man the benefit of the doubt and say that he's probably encountered people who did not know where Poland was. So
Yeah,
we know where Poland is, and we love Poland. Poland's a great country. Thanks for joining us, Medics man.
No,
take the walk to Poland. Have you heard that Yachty song, Bryce?
Who is that?
All right, never mind.
All right, thanks.
All right, cool.
Oh, can I ask you, is Leangelo, is he good?
No.
All my students are like singing his song, rapping his song, whatever. And then I saw people giving him props for yesterday. Is this song good?
No, it's not. I think it's like it's like, to me, it's like a very like 6 out of 10, like kind of like spin off like 2002 era Nelly song. Like it's different. Like
so I would love it because I love 2002 Nelly. I mean, 2000.
Yeah, you actually might like it. Actually,
2000s hip hop and rap was my thing between Nelly and 50 and Eminem and all of that. So
it might be for you. Like the song is fine. Like it's not a bad song. Like the song doesn't suck. It's just I don't understand how it's gotten to like this point. Like it's like that with the novelty of, I guess, the fact that it's like Jello, and it's a catchy song, but like it's fine. Like I don't know, it's just fine.
Medics Man says last time he was here, we said Poland is close to Brazil. I need tape on this. I don't believe
Yeah,
this
we
to
need
be
some
true.
receipts. We
I
need
want, I
receipts.
want, I want the receipt. Listen, we are joking. We were having fun. I hope if you can't watch live, if you're not watching the video, we have smiles on our faces as we are talking about this. So thank you again, everybody for tuning in, and we really enjoy you. So back to Pistons. I just think it's a lot of information moving forward. Guys, we're kind of avoiding the second guy conversation because we're going to talk about the deadline here in just a little bit. So I don't want to overlap too much. Let's stay on what we've seen. I asked Sam Vecini this the other day whenever we both made the case for Cade Cunningham as all NBA, and we both had him very securely in there at that time. Who's the Pistons' second best player right now? This was my case for Cade Cunningham, second best NBA All-Star, All-Star and All-NBA, third team All-NBA.
Who is their second best player right now?
Who is their second best player right now? They take the floor tomorrow afternoon against the Houston Rockets. Who is their second best player? Westfoot ... Isaiah Stewart ? That, along with your silence right now, says everything people need to know. Rogue says Tobias. I'll hear it. I think he's been pretty bad defensively recently, especially. I thought it's not even his fault. He just can't move anymore. Maurice says Harris.
Tobias says, so I looked up his numbers. Like, obviously, he was kind of cold in 2024, but
it's been better recently, right?
Yeah, like I think it's the last 9 or 10 games, however many they've played this year. He's shooting like 51% overall and like 46 from three. Only about 15 points per game. So like not super high volume, but he has been shooting the ball a lot better.
He was really efficient last night in his 21 points. I mean, over the last 10, counting last night, he's 52% from the field.
Okay, yeah.
45% from three, 95% from the free throw line. The rebounding is down a little bit, 3 assists, doesn't turn it over. The thing is, it's low volume. It's 11 attempts a game, which is fine. But with J.I. out, you kind of need a volume second guy.
And that's the thing. Like, he could probably be taking 15,
Yeah, guys, real quick.
Yeah.
We're not including Jaden Ivey. Like, this is kind of our point. And kind of the point I'm making is, yes, I think easily J.I. was Hooper, the mascot. Like, to your point earlier, I think people are starting to see that whether you believe in J.I. or not, they need that guy. I think this year has been a lot of proof of concept stuff as well. One proof of concept is when you put floor spacing around these guys, they can be really good, specifically Cade Cunningham. I think another proof of concept is this team absolutely needs a second guy that they do not have right now, whether that's improvement from Jaden Ivey, improvement from Ron Holland, or you go make a move for one. So that's just my case for Cade Cunningham. And what have you thought about Cade the last couple of games? I know the efficiency hasn't been there. The one thing I will give Cade, Omari, he had to guard Kevin freaking Durant last night on the other end of the floor while taking all of the usage on the offensive end of the floor. So he has got a lot of weight to carry right now in these games.
Yeah, he slept in like 14 for 47 in his last 2 games. I know he was 7 for 21 against Indiana. And then last night, I think he was 7 for 26. Which I just think we're seeing, like, to me, this is kind of like the logical outcome of when you lose a guy like J.I. and, teams can just essentially dedicate all of their game plan to just slowing down Cade. And like, he's going to have off nights here and there anyway. Like, I honestly thought it was just more of an off night against Indiana, whereas last night I thought he was just being asked to do a lot and it just wasn't enough around him to keep the team uplifted. He's still, dishing the ball. He's still getting to his spots, taking the exact same shots. Like last night, I think his first make was like that pull-up 3 out of the pick and roll, which we've seen him do a lot more this season. And, it looked like he was going to, be on track for a solid night. And the next thing you know, he's 1 for 11 overall. Again, like, I just think a lot of it is just he's being asked to do a lot right now. You have 2 games against teams that, can pretty much score at will, especially with KD and Book are, combining for 71 really points, however much it was. Like, you just can't, it's only so much you could do about that. And that was still a close game, even with, the Pistons really only having like Tobias Harris, like hitting shots at like a somewhat solid clip. So, K's just being asked to do a lot. Like, I think just the natural ebb and flow of the season, you're going to have stretches where, you're just kind of bogged down. Not a cause for concern, obviously, with the way he's been playing, but he is being asked to do a lot, and I think we're starting to see now that without Ji in this lineup to at least eat up some of that attention, it has made his life a little bit harder.
I should mention also we had some Malik Beasley comments as well as the second best player. And yes, Maurice, you're right. I feel like maybe we were a little bit slow to this, but we have mentioned, yes, Ivy needs spacing too and had looked good with the spacing. I think in terms of spacing, listen, I love Ausar Thompson. Guys, if you go look at the Motor City Hoops Substack, I have an image very early on in the Substack from the game last night. The spacing with him and Duren on the floor is not good. And teams are just straight up not guarding him. Even though if you look at the raw numbers, like the 3-point percentage, where he's a touch better than Ron Holland, they actually respect Ron Holland as a shooter more than Ausar even. So it's not good with either. Mr. Jones, they play 10 feet off Ausar and Ron all game. I agree. Like, I think Ron definitely hurts the spacing as well. But there's one, and the other thing is Asar's natural instinct is to like cut into the lane, be in the dunker spot, stuff like that. And so it like Cade was trying to do a mid post, and there were 7 dudes in the lane because that's where they all want to do. Like they all want to cut there. Asar's natural instinct is to cut, which is okay. But Omari, then other guys can't cut also. And when he's on the floor with Duren's already going to be there. So I think that's one thing with Ji as well. We gave Ji credit for his shooting, but he was over 40%. I mean, he's over 40% right now. He had real gravity on the perimeter. And by inserting Ausar for him, that has hurt things in terms of spacing on the offensive end.
No, it absolutely has. And what they've gained defensively with Ausar, that's absolutely the flip side, which is just that, teams pack the paint and you're seeing something a little bit closer to what we're seeing Cade deal with last season. Ausar, I think he started all but 2 of the games since Ivy went down. And in most of those, it worked, right? Like they could still move the ball, find open shots, back down shots. I think with that, you look at a guy like Malik Beasley who struggled against Indiana and then didn't hit a lot of shots last night either. And again, like I guess when you already have cramped spacing and your shooters are coming in and you're not getting that same lift, it makes you feel, Ivy not being there a lot more. What Ivy hit like 6 threes or something in like 20 minutes in that game he went down like
really well. Yes,
like
the catch and shoot numbers. Most importantly, Omari, the catch and shoot numbers had gotten really good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we talk like with Ausar on offense, he does so much great stuff, but the reality is that if you have non-shooters at the 4 and 5, like eventually that's going to catch up with you. And I wonder if it's something where they actually look at making some tweaks where, maybe you try to get, maybe Stu or Reed some more shots up where you start to make adjustments just so that you can leave Ausar out there for longer stretches. Because again, like there's a difference between being like a bad shooter, but Ron can still knock a couple down, and a complete non-shooter where like teams are like not even acknowledging his presence on the floor when he's in the corner. I think that really bogs them down offensively. And that's something that you probably have to adjust lineups wise to ease that a bit.
So Wes with an interesting number here. Ausar has taken 18 threes this year and made 7. Holland has taken 76 over the same time period and has made 19. So it just is different. I'm not saying Holland has gravity and floor spacing, but it is different even between those two guys. We had
just knowing that he's willing to shoot, I think makes a big difference because he's not going to hesitate to shoot. And that's like, that makes a huge difference. Like that's a huge disparity in like shot attempts, 18 to 79.
Let's go to break. When I come back, I want us to talk about some players because I do want to talk about this Ausar because somebody asked how does he attack this? And I do think there's an answer. He just has to be able to do it. I would like to talk a little bit about Jalen Duren. I at least want to throw out what I've seen defensively from him over the last couple of games. I'm not going to give a strong opinion, but I want to throw out what I've seen. We can talk about a couple other guys. I think Marcus Sasser deserves a conversation here as well. And then we can get into all the trade deadline stuff also. So we'll get into Ausar's offense when we come back from this short break.
All right, we are back with segment two, and we could probably finish out this Asard talk before we get to some of
Real
these
quick,
other
this
key
this
guys.
is an interesting on Cade.
Yeah.
Ali Missile. I'm sorry, bad on the last name. Cade can't be asked to bring the ball up, being guarded full court, play good defense, rebound, and score. We need a secondary ball handler really bad. That is something I meant to mention when we were talking about these last two games, and that's a
Mhm.
great point. These last two teams, and I think this is kind of an Indiana thing in general, but the Pacers full court pressed quite a bit, and Nimharn specifically, who's really good. And then why is Ryan Dunn on the court for the Suns as a rookie? Because he can guard. And so I mentioned it again in the Substack. They actually did go away from just like letting Duran dribble the ball up. And I think one time Ausar did as well. But yes, they have to figure something out because teams are going to continue to do it more and more.
Mhm.
Ausar offensively, Omari, what are your thoughts? My thought, he's got to attack that space. We've seen him do it a couple times where when a guy plays 10 feet off, he's so athletic, attack them downhill. The reason people don't just stand in the lane against Giannis is because if you do that against Giannis, and listen, I realize we're talking about an MVP caliber player versus, second year Ausar, but it's because if he gets downhill, you can't stop him. You're going to foul him or he's going to get a bucket. Amin does this as well in Houston. Like Amin's just a little bit more skilled right now than Ausar, which was the case coming in to the NBA. He has to attack that space. And he just, we've seen him do it, but he's got to do it more consistently, Omari.
And that's what I was thinking with Asar, is that if you're not going to shoot, then you have to bring something else, I believe, offensively. And with Asar, if he can at least emulate some of that ball handling you get with JI, where he's going downhill, then I think that helps. Like, I feel like we've seen Asar's handle look improved in like flashes this season. He's had, like, whether it's been in transition or even in half court, I feel like he's had those moments where you see his gather looks a little bit quicker than last season. And there's probably a bit more finesse there than he had. But it's got to be one or the other. I think for a guy like him, he sees the floor. This is a perfect opportunity. And we talked about it when JI first went down, but just to allow him to operate as that secondary guy and see how he fares. We've seen it here and there. I think he's had some good moments and some moments where he struggled, but no one else on the roster can really replicate that. I feel like other than Ron Holland, and Ron obviously is he makes a lot of good plays, but he's also still pretty raw in his own ways too.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm curious about with Ausar. And I actually just looked it up because I was curious, because in my mind I was thinking Ron is a much more aggressive shot hunter than Ausar is, but they're actually both averaging exactly 16.4 shot attempts per 100 possessions, which I wish I thought was pretty interesting. So Ausar for sure, I think he could be a little bit more aggressive when he has the ball.
I mean, Ausar has been awesome in transition. That dude drives transition and creates a lot of wide open shot attempts for his teammates. And we've seen Ron in a different way because Ron attacks to score a little bit more. We've seen both of those guys be really good in transition. What it's about is those guys taking that and transitioning, it into the half court where they can attack in the half court. And we've seen flashes. I think Ausar could end up not being a negative in this role. He just has to, it must not be as easy as what I think it is sometimes. And because I say this about a lot of guys, like, just do the Draymond thing, just dribble into DHOs. It's simple, right? If your man's playing 15 feet off and you dribble into a DHO, your man's not going to be there to help once you hand it off. But that takes everybody being on the same page. We did finally see him attack some offensive rebounds. And so I think that's a place where you can be really impactful, because when your man's playing that far off of you, they tend to lose track of you in general, cutting. But as somebody pointed out, was it you, Wes? No, it was somebody else in the chat. I'm sorry, I missed it. But when you have like Duran always in the lane and then Ausar cuts to the lane or Ausar drives to there, Bobby Buckets, then it's crowded, right? Like there's a little bit of that. Where somebody else mentioned the Mobley Allen like passing. I've listened to a lot of Cavs podcasts talk about the reason the Mobley Allen thing works better this year is those guys both pass the ball really well to each other. Again, from Bobby Buckets. Ausar can pass. Duran's passing, I feel like, has maybe regressed. Like he threw one yesterday that was just way off target. And listen, nobody was higher on Jalen Duran being able to operate DHOs and pass the ball and stuff like that than me coming into the draft. Like, I'm going to end up being wrong here if it doesn't happen. I just don't feel like we've seen it as much as I thought we were going to, but that would be what they would have to figure out. Ausar drives, attacks that space. Duren's man helps, and then Ausar throws the lob. The same way we see Cade do with Duren all the time. We just haven't seen any of those connections between those two guys.
Yeah, and I think along with that, you go back to the difference between our men and Ausar coming into the draft. Like it really, like I've been seeing a lot more comparison between the two, just given that our men's playing such a key role for a pretty good Houston Rockets team. But they really are different players, and I think that's one thing to keep in mind with Ausar as well is that like his brother was more of like the on ball, like get downhill, dribble drive, break down, and Ausar was more of the all around, well rounded, like. He could do a little bit of everything, but he doesn't necessarily have offensively like one dominant skill. So, yeah, it really is a skill development question for Ausar because he does so much great stuff, yet on a team like this where they're still lacking a bit offensively, I think his offensive shortcomings become a lot more pronounced. And, sometimes it can be tougher to appreciate, what he does defensively when you're just not getting enough scoring, essentially.
Mel says, do the Pistons not have the personnel to have Ausar and the dunker the way the Rockets do with the men? The obvious answer I'd say here is Jalen Duren doesn't pass like Alperen Şengün. Like there's a different level of running the offense. And I know a lot of that offense runs through Jalen Green also, but Şengün just has a different level of gravity away from the basket than Jalen Duren does. So that would be my immediate thing. The other thing I want to say, and like, I'm not trying to like crap on Ausar Thompson. Amin is a better defender than him right now also. Like, I think a lot of people like just because they're twins he is not the same level of defender as Amin. Amin is going to be first team all NBA defense. I think Asar's not there yet. I love the upside. I think he can still get to that kind of level, but Amin is just more well-rounded in general. So, I think that's the answer. I want to talk about Jalen Duren defense. I'll throw out what I've seen the last two games, Omari. You can riff off of that or whatever. I thought Jalen Duren's defense had been better in those games where the Pistons were winning. In that stretch of wins, I thought it was better. I didn't think it was good. I thought it was at least neutral. And I would say, at the very least, all season long, Jalen Duren has been better making defensive playmaking plays. He rotates and blocks a shot. He gets a steal. Like, he has done that stuff better. Wes, maybe you can pull the numbers here and see if this is backed up at all per 100 possessions, just steals, blocks. We don't have to go to NBA.com for deflections or anything. I thought the last two games showed where Duren has to get a lot better defensively, Omari. Against the Pacers, it was the stretch big, right? Like he wasn't able to get there. He had some like real mess ups, like lack of sense of urgency, that stuff. And then, yes, Bobby Bucket says his hands in pick and roll, they're better, but they're not always perfect. Again, if you go to the Substack, I have videos where they're in the wrong place. He turns his hips. Like, he has some real nuance he still has to work through in pick and roll. And it got him 2 of his fouls last night against Nick Richards.
Yeah, it did. During this season, I think him being able to like watch how Isaiah Stewart has maximized his minutes when he's in, and just the sheer amount of effort Isaiah plays with, like on his blocks. I mean, there's been so many blocks where he's just like, it's just all arm extension, right? Like,
I literally don't know how he does it. Like, I love Isaiah Stewart. Again, like, it was pretty cool in Denver. He like had recognized me, came over, said, "What's up, guy? Big dog, whatever." Shook my hand and kept walking, and I appreciate that. I love Beef Stew. I've taken a lot of crap for defending Beef Stew over the last couple of years, and now everybody loves him, which I love. I don't know how he does it. How does he get there? Like, you get a better view of this sometimes, but I'm like, it's incredible.
It's just mind blowing, because he will literally, like, you could just see that he just has utmost confidence that like he could time that jump perfectly. You realize how long his arms are when he does it, because he's 6'8", and it'll be guys like 3-4 inches taller, and he just does it perfectly. So you watch Isaiah do those things night in and night out, and I think that has rubbed off on Duren, where you just see the sheer, like, the extent that could energize the team and the crowd and like kind of swing games and create runs all on its own. So I think Duren has been doing more of that, and he's trying to emulate that activity And you're right, like the activity has improved. His blocks are up, his steals are up. He's being more disruptive overall. Now I think it's just the second to second and minute attention, right? Just being mentally locked in every single possession. Like you can't give like Miles Turner was what, like 6 of 9 from 3 or something crazy. Like
it was all over help and lack of sense of urgency, Omari.
yeah, and it
That's
was
truly
just
what it was.
yeah, like none of those should have been open. Like there was like maybe one of those threes was difficult. I think there was one that was like sort of a step back, like he
That
had
was
to create it. But
and that one may have been on Stu also.
and it might have been on Stu actually.
I'll go look because I actually tracked every single. The advantage of watching the games after the fact is I already know the narratives coming into the watch, so I can keep track of these things. So keep going. I'll go check for sure which one it was.
For sure, but it's just attention stuff, like you know exactly who Miles Turner is as a player. You know what he's trying to do, and you know that he's already knocked down 3 3-pointers. So it's just that stuff, right? Like you could be more active. Like he has the lobs and the rebounding and all that, and that's great. But it's just that type of stuff. Like all that impact gets erased when you're giving up like 3 threes in a quarter, And we've seen him struggle with those types of stretch bigs enough this season to where it's been like a legitimate recurring problem because stretch bigs are not going to go anywhere. Like you're just going to deal with more and more stretch bigs as your career goes. So that's absolutely to me. Even if he can improve in one area this season, it's got to be just not letting guys like Miles Turner and Brook Lopez and Cat knock down 5-6 threes a game. Like that, like it just can't happen. Like that kills you.
Yep, I agree 100%. That one was over Stu for what it's worth. Like Turner went step back, and I even clipped that one. Like Stu had a pretty good contest, and that's Omari. That's truly
and I was because in real time I'm like, man, like I remember now because I tweeted like Stu actually made him work for that one, and he still hit it, but he was already in a rhythm at that point. So
yeah, so that's my thing is Stu gets off the bigs a little bit more than I like also, but if you look at most of them, Stu gets a contest. And often Duran either doesn't have the sense of urgency to get to the contest, or there's one against Turner where he doesn't even put his hand up, Omari. His hands are still down to his side. So I think it's little things that like can be fixed. And I'll be honest, I could live with the ball screen stuff a lot better if he was better taking away these stretch bigs. And so man-seated Bryce, great interview with Pistons Jack. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, make sure you guys listen to all that stuff. I was over there. Someone mentioned earlier Omari being on the radio. Wes, thank goodness I was right here that the stats back up what I was trying to say. I was a little bit nervous. Duran's stocks per 100. His rookie year were 3. Last year they went down to 2.2. And then this year they're back up to 3.2. So definitely an improvement over last year, just a slight improvement over his rookie season. Guys, we will get to the trade deadline stuff in just a second. I kind of wanted to get through some players, and then we have all of your questions. We're starring them. We'll get into that conversation. Real quick before we go to Marcus Sasser, Paul Reed continues to impress me in his minutes. I was not like a huge, this is going to matter much. He comes in, he plays with great energy. He had a play last night where he hedged probably 40 feet from the basket. Pass was made out, and he recovered all the way to the corner and got a contest. Then he outran everybody, transition offense a couple possessions later, and then came back on defense and got a block in a similar type situation where he recovered from the top of the key. So I just wanted to give Paul Reed a shout out. He's not a starting level center, but I think as a 2, I think I wrote recently, he's a 2.5. Steven Suggs, Paul Reed, break glass when needed. Yeah, I don't know that you necessarily want him to be your only backup center, but if your other guys are injured or foul trouble, or you just need a jolt of energy, I think Paul Reed is awesome for that role.
Yeah, I mentioned it a few weeks ago on the pod, but like just watching Paul Reed from afar and watching him this season, I never realized that for a lot of centers, he really is giving up like an inch or two and maybe 20, 30 pounds. Like he has a lean build for a center, but he's just pure energy. Like he comes out and like I was just looking at per 100 numbers, like he's leading the team like blocks and steals per 100. And like, it's not even particularly close. And just to have, especially for the backup centers that this team's had, just to have a center who literally just comes in and it's just pure activity with with just how handsy he is. Like, I think that's been huge for this team. And yeah, again, like I thought he was solid last night. Duran and Stu were both in foul trouble. That's actually been a really nice luxury for this team to have. Like, when your third big is a guy who can just come in and create that type of havoc.
All right, so Jaden Ivey went out the Orlando Magic game on New Year's Day. The 9 games since, Marcus Sasser has gotten more minutes. What have you thought about his play here recently? Honestly, immediately after that game, wasn't, he didn't really pop off. But in his last 6, including last night, only 8 points in 16 minutes, but 50% from the field, 56% from three. I thought he created a little bit last night. There was 2 off the top of my head. He got buckets when Cade was sitting out. I think he's doing some of the defensive, like just pesky pest stuff that I've always wanted to see from him. What have your thoughts been on Sasser as we talk about guys who get a little bit more of a role and opportunity with JI not being able to play?
Yeah, I think Sass has really settled into like an ideal role of like the guard who can come in and take care of the ball and really knock down shots. Like I'm looking at his percentages this season. He's shooting 48% overall, 39% from three. He's got a very positive assist to turnover ratio, and like he doesn't turn the ball over. Like, like maybe there are plays where it's like he probably could have hit the open man, but he doesn't turn the ball over. And I think that's still really huge for a backup point guard to be able to come in and not turn the ball over and get an efficient bucket. Last night, I thought the fourth quarter, in the second half, really, there was just, a handful of plays where he just hit a really timely shot, to keep the Pistons right in it. And he's been doing that consistently, I feel like, for, like a month or 2 now. He's just been really efficient, maximizing his 15 to 20 minutes on the floor. And it's been fun to watch him play. Like, again, just doesn't turn the ball over, 48% overall, 39 from three. He's going to give you between 8 and 13 points within that span. And I think that's filled a hole for this bench unit, especially with Ivy out. And, and you have some guys who are adding to that bench unit who are playing more starters minutes. So he's been good. He's been really good for him.
Bobby Bucket says every time Sass shoots a step back, I think it's going in. Like, I'm with you. Like, it's really nice. It looks smooth. I think the synergy numbers back that up a little bit. Wes says, I hate the Sasser conversation because I think he's playing really well, but it doesn't feel too impactful because the team needs another creator and he's just not that. I would agree. Steven Suggs, Marcus Sasser is a quality backup NBA player. Yeah, I think that's true, Steven. Like, I'm with that. I think that's the perfect way to describe him. Is a quality backup NBA player in the right role. It's really good. If he can continue to improve his catch and shoot numbers, I would love it even more. If he could continue to improve, like, hey, I'm going to pick you up full. He did this last night to Grayson Allen. He picked up Grayson Allen between like the 3-point line and half court line in the backcourt. Almost got an 8-second call, and then Grayson Allen tried to dribble away from him, and it was, a foul. He drew an offensive foul, and I want to see more of that as well. So Arthur says, stepped up, hit shots. Does he make plays for others? No, I don't. I don't think he's a point guard. Like I'm not discounting you, Omari, calling him a point. I don't think he's a primary initiator. I've kind of tried to remove point guard from my vocabulary. I don't think Sasser drives offense for everybody. Can he go get some of his own buckets? Sure. Can he go score the ball? Sure. I don't know that you definitely need a very good secondary creator. I wonder how much Sasser and Ausar have played together, Omari, because I think that's the pairing I want to see where, okay, Sasser can maybe play point guard, bringing the ball up, but then Ausar maybe kind of drives offense. And I don't know. I just feel like that pairing would be interesting to me. Rogue says Sass catch and shoot isn't good, right? More off the dribble. That is correct. I don't have the synergy numbers off the top of my head, but in general, he's a little bit better off the bounce than he is with the catch and shoot. So, yeah, like you put Sasser, Ausar, Stu at the center there, and that trio of guys with, whoever it is, Beasley, THJ, etc., around them. Because then that allows Ausar to do some of that creation that I'm here to see if he can do. And you still have Sasser out there, so it's not just him doing it on his own. I don't know. I would like to see a little bit of that. Maybe it's happened more than what I realize, and it just hasn't been fruitful. But
yeah, it's tough because you're talking about 2 guys who are, averaging like around 20 minutes, between 15 to 25 minutes a night.
Right? Like Ausar's minutes are still obviously being limited, and Sasser's under 15. So that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm on Cleaning the Glass now, pulling up their actual possessions together this season, and it's loading now. So they've played. It says they've been on the floor for 176 possessions, which, it's not a lot, but Like now I'm seeing how many possessions Ausar has played to kind of put that into context. So Ausar has played 766 possessions, and
And
like
how many?
176 of those are with Sasser. So
Yeah,
like
not a
less
lot.
than like I don't know, in my mind that's like a fifth or a sixth of his minutes maybe. So not a lot at all. You're talking about a small sample size of a small sample
Yeah.
size. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I don't know. I just kind of talked myself into it. I wanted to give Sasser a little bit of a shout out. I mean, Yaya says like, yes, he is small. I'm with there's limitations here. There's no question about it. Let's go to break. I know a lot of questions and comments and everything have been about the trade deadline and all of that. Before we go, Derek Brown says, sorry, guys, I'm trying to donate some money to the super chat, but I forgot my Apple password and won't let me reset it right now. I'll try next week. No, thank you, Derek.
No
Appreciate it.
problem at all. We appreciate you.
Plus, you gave me an excuse to mention that the super chat is open for anybody who wants to put their question in via that or just show your support or whatever. We appreciate that. RB, our guys, set us up last week with that. So thank you very much. We're going to go to break. When we come back, let's start talking trade deadline stuff, Omari.
All right, we're back with segment 3. I'm going to lead off. We're talking trade deadline. I'm going to lead off by saying today I wrote a story.
Saw this, yes.
You know,
read Omari Sankofa II on the Detroit Free Press.
Yeah, basically just previewing why the Pistons probably are not going to take that big swing on February 6th. And I know that's become more of a topic since they had that 10-2 stretch. But just talking to people, like I've not gotten the sense at all that they're looking at this deadline like, oh, like we're finally winning, so let's go ahead and go all the way in. You know, look at the Lions, right? You get expectations because you're actually good, and then it hits differently. Like they won 14 games last year. They're not looking at this deadline like let's go all in and raise everybody's expectations because we think we can win the championship. No, they're not there yet. They've been winning for 3 weeks, and yeah, I think they're very much looking at this as still like a multi-year thing. So but within that, you cannot make a big swing and still address some of your roster needs, right? Whether that's from an asset standpoint or from a let's get Kate a little bit of ball handling help standpoint. There's still different paths they can pursue, but if you want like a Levine or Brennan Ingram type swing, but they're giving up assets, then that's probably not as likely at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough right now. And again, I think a couple more weeks and maybe we'll see. And I think what's going to be interesting is I think if this team doesn't win games over the next couple of weeks to finish off January, people are going to look at it from different perspectives. Some people will look at that and say, hey, they're not really that close. Continue to let the young guys play and then go into the offseason. Other people, and I see this side of it from, he or she says if Langdon doesn't go out and get one of the all-star caliber players off the trade block to help Cade, this is the 5th year of a rebuild, tired of losing. I think some people will look at it that way and say, hey, you got to go make a move so that way this team can win down the stretch, right? Yeah. And so I understand both sides of it, Omari. I just haven't wavered from my stance, which was I don't think you make a move at the deadline. I would not do that right now because I want to continue to see who these guys are and who these guys aren't. What if Duren doesn't get better defensively the rest of the year? Maybe then that's the guy you want to move. I wouldn't move Jalen Duren right now, though. So I don't. So, yeah, here's what I'd say. Tell us why the Pistons won't make a trade. Nobody is coming here as a free agent. Why does the trade have to happen now? Why can it not wait till the offseason would be my thing. So I don't disagree with you. And like talking to Keith Smith, Detroit may not even work under the salary cap team anyway. Like there may not even be salary cap space for them to sign a free agent if they wanted to. Now there's definitely paths to do it if they did. All I'm saying is don't you want to know more about Ausar, Ron, JD before you trade them? Because the guys you mentioned, I don't think you're getting Zach LaVine now without giving up at least one of those guys, right? Like, would you agree, Amari? I feel like
no, like if you're making a LaVine trade, well, his value is the highest it's been in years.
Yeah,
literally.
Like the LaVine trade was last year.
Yeah, like you get him like he's a depressed asset. You know, the reality is like, what trade are they making this season that's going to put them in contention with the the Boston Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, like those types of teams? Like, what trade is going to get you up? Like, there's no trade that's going to do that because you need a second superstar next to Cade, and you're still down the first round pick. Like that's what they're looking at it. Like you're a 500 team now. Like congrats, you got to the next threshold. You're playing with house money as a season. You have 7 more wins than you had last season with 39 games left. Like you're in great position. Uh, you're not winning the championship this year. Like you're just not. But you have flexibility. You are the only team in the NBA with cap space. You have 14 million in cap space. They had 10 million after last offseason. And then they did the thing with Paul Reed where they waived them and then signed them to like a cheaper deal to save 4 million. So you're the only team with cap space. You're 500. You hope to, like, if you hover around 500 the rest of the year, I think that is just objectively compared to last season. Like that's a great year. If I'm Trajan, I'm not looking at this year like, oh, like let's go ahead and cash some of this in and like try to top out and make the second round of the playoffs. Like, no, you don't rebuild for all this time just to become a second round playoff team. So if you're at this point now, see it all the way through. There's no reason to cash in those chips before you have to. And yeah, I just don't think Trajan in its first year is thinking, oh, like we're 500, so let's go ahead and cash in all of our future flexibility to go get a guy who may not even be as good as Cade. Like I just don't think they're there yet, and I don't think timeline wise that's what they went into this season thinking that they would be able to do.
Mr. Ray brings up something very important and thing I've been thinking about a lot. Says it's not about winning anything this year. It's about getting valuable playoff experience. I think that's a great point. Here's where I've changed a little bit on this. Aren't we getting experiences right now? They're playing meaningful basketball every single game all year long. Yeah. And here's the other thing. They're going to play quote unquote playoff basketball down the stretch as they go, like as they fight for play-in position. Is it the same? No. But we're getting meaning. I've told somebody this. You know why I love watching the Pistons this year, Omari? It's because I actually get to watch games that matter, and I get to watch other teams and evaluate them. Over the past few years, and especially last year, nobody took that game serious. Everybody rested their guy. You never saw full-strength teams. And so I understand that 100%. And I don't disagree with the idea in general. I just do think that we're getting a lot of the data that we need to get anyway. And if this team isn't good enough to get into the play-in anyway, then I don't think with as is. Now I'll take a step back because we're about to talk about a different avenue that somebody brought up. So I'm just okay with that. I just like if you bring Zach LaVine in, like what all you're going to learn is that Zach LaVine is really good. I don't know how much you learn about everybody else. So, I don't know. I'm cool with them playing it out. Other than I think there is a perfect threaded needle path that I would love to see Trajan be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely walk both paths. And I would also say you talk about them still owing that first round pick, but let's say they don't do anything at the deadline. Let's say they're like, you know what, like Beasley, Tim Hardaway, Paul Reed, like Tobias, like this is the first time we've had a deadline where all the vets are happy and contributing to winning, right? Like the vibes are great. Everybody's locked in. Everybody's trying to win. Everybody's contributing. Like let's say you just do something very minor, right? Like you do some sort of auxiliary move where you eat a contract, buy the guy out, maybe you get a second round pick or something for the trouble or whatever. You let this season ride out. You get to the playoffs. If you win a playoff series, now oh, like this team is actually for real, right? They've only been winning for 3 weeks. I think you have to see I think you have to see this team in the playoffs to really know how ready they actually are. I don't think you look at 3.5 weeks of regular season where, they string some wins together for the first time in 5 years and say, oh, like we finally made it. Like, yeah, if you get to the playoffs and like you either win a playoff series or, you take a team down to the wire, that gives you a much better idea of where you are. And I think you can just kind of ride this out and just honestly just go that path. Like not to say that do nothing at the trade deadline, but yeah, but just let Cade cook, ride the season out, go to the playoffs. And by this time, July, you'll know exactly where you are because you have a full season of, watching these guys try to thrive under less than ideal circumstances, which they have done so far.
Yeah. And so the other thing I want to mention here is you also figure out what's up with your draft pick. I saw somebody earlier mention trading a first round pick for Cam Johnson. Well, remember right now they would have to be like, 2028, I think, Wes, maybe 2029. Yeah. 9 based on the protections. So you'd have to trade one way out. But if you wait till the offseason with all due respect, I disagree here. I don't think the Pistons know what they have. I don't think they know.
Definitely not after 14 win year.
I don't think they know what Jalen Duren fully is or not. I don't think they know what Ausar fully is or not. And I don't think they know even close to what Ron Holland is or is not. Like, I respect everybody's opinion, but I personally feel that they don't have those answers on anybody other than Cade. Like, Cade is the only one I feel very strongly that I know of the young guys. That's my opinion. I respect everybody else's, but that's what I believe. I just think going to the offseason, having more of that data and knowing where the draft pick is at and the potential, even Ivy. Ivy showed, I'm an Ivy believer. I would have liked to see the rest of the season. I would have, to be completely honest. I would have liked to see the rest of the season from Jaden Ivey. Interesting, guys. So you guys that are saying he's proved who he is, I would like to know what you think that one is, what that is. If it's the second option, if it's the third option, whatever. I'm just out of curiosity because I still don't know which one of those answers. And that's where I guess where I say I'm not sure yet with Jaden Ivey. I don't know I don't know that I could say definitively which one of those options he slots into. So I'd be curious where you guys find him. Yeah, I mean, obviously, definitely stay on the team. I'm just saying I don't know if Jaden Ivey's the number 2 guy next to Cade or if he's a number 3 or something like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, I think he was good. Like, Ivy obviously had a really great season. Yeah, in the grand scheme, I think those are things you still try to figure out. Which again, if you see a guy like a Ron or a Sar, somebody take a step forward as a scorer, then that's something I kind of want to see too at that point, right? Like, if you have 3 young guys who are really putting up points, then how would JI fit into that pecking order? And I also want to say before I forget, I think I was making this point earlier, and then I forgot what point I was trying to make. But you could also write this season out and win enough games to make the playoffs and just get rid of that pick obligation this offseason, right? And then if you do that, now you're going into next offseason with all your draft picks in front of you. And you didn't give anything up, right? Like, you still have your flexibility. And to me, that's almost a best case scenario, right? To where if you're not going to trade for a pick and get that first round pick back via trade, and at the very least, you could just ride this season out, get rid of that obligation. And now you're completely whole going into a season where it's Cade's first back season. And at the very least that you are a decent basketball team. So again, this is like this pivotal point, I feel like, to where you kind of have to find that line of like still improving the team, but not overcommitting to a roster that you're going to have to break down in 5 years because it wasn't good enough.
Okay, so maybe I'm not making my point clear because Steven says also they know what they have in beef stew. 100% agreed. Beef stew, third big, second center, whatever you want to call it. I agree. I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you want to trade all of this in for a guy, the second option, the third option, whatever, when you don't even know if you may have the second option on the roster? Like, are we sure Ron Holland can't be that guy? Are we sure that Jaden Ivey can't be that guy? Because inconsistently, he's shown the ability to be that. Wes says it. Ivy has proven he's an NBA starter in the league. I agree with that. I'm not saying we're like talking about these guys being NBA players or not. What I'm saying is I would like to see and let this play out a little bit more and so Steven, like, if you think Ivy's a second option and you're confident, like, I respect it. I'm not there yet. I would like to see it be more consistent.
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton is a second option. I'm trying to think of some other teams. Jaylen Brown is a second option. Like Roddy's good. Like
Kyrie Irving.
Like, you're talking about like all-star, borderline all-star.
Jalen Williams with the Thunder.
Like Jalen Williams with the Thunder. Like, second options on these teams are like all-star guys. So that's kind of what we're getting at. It's one thing to be a starter. It's another thing to be a second option, and that's, I think, looking at how competitive the NBA is now, like, yeah, second options are guys like Halliburton and all-star caliber guys, and JI has not gotten there yet. So I think that's really what it boils down to. You have to be better than JI has been this season to really be a second option to where you're winning playoff games.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's another pick. I'm just saying I would not trade these guys. All I'm saying is I would not trade the young guys at the deadline. I would wait for more data. That's all I'm saying. I feel like I've belabored this point because I think the other thing I'm not saying is that they shouldn't do anything, Omari. I don't think they should. I don't think I think, and Mr. Ray, you said this earlier, about like adding something to him. I do think that he can thread that needle. I think there are guys that somebody brought up like Lonzo Ball earlier. I think I'm more interested in that type of idea now than I was, or like I don't necessarily just want to see them take a bad contract that can't be in the rotation. I think there's going to be guys there, Omari, at the trade deadline that Trajan can bring in that are expiring contracts that can work into the rotation, but maybe another team's just trying to get rid of them, right? Like they need to move on from them for whatever reason. I think that's who I'm interested in, not the Brandon Ingram. Not like again, I think Zach LaVine is a positive value now. I think you're trading at least one of the young guys or draft capital for Zach LaVine. Even maybe I'll be way off here, but he has been awesome. He has been incredibly awesome this year. Zach LaVine has. So maybe because of the contract and injury history, it doesn't end up like if you tell me you can get him without that stuff, I'm a little bit more here for it. Yeah. But like if you can just trade expiring deals or and vets or whatever, then okay. But I would be very excited if he brings in somebody that can fill the role that this team needs with that cap space.
Yeah. Yeah, and we probably both agree that like if you're not getting a clear all-star caliber guy, and like trading any type of picks probably a non-starter, right? Like you can't give up a second pick for a team that hasn't won a playoff game, can you? Like I think that's probably from a value standpoint, that's the other thing too. Like you look at OKC, like how many draft picks do they have? Like there are teams in Detroit's bracket that are just way more rich in assets. And that doesn't mean that, that they're automatically going to be in better position going forward. But that is something I think you keep in mind too. Like these other teams have not made those types of moves. They have sat back, they have drafted, they've developed. And now Houston and OKC have all these more young guys than they could play or afford to pay, but they're winning games and they can just essentially sit back and pick their own destiny, right? Because you have more assets that you can use. The Pistons are not there. Like not only have they not won to the extent of those games, they don't have assets, or won to the extent of those teams, they don't have assets to the extent of those teams. So again, like I think you have to look at the Pistons position compared to the rest of the league. And you can't make moves in a vacuum. You have to look at how does this position us compared to other teams in our bracket? And does this make us better off long term or worse off long term? Grizzlies, they did not cash in all their chips as soon as they started winning. Houston didn't do that. Phoenix didn't do that. Like typically teams ride things out. Like, you don't want to cash in before you have to. So just looking at recent teams, like I feel like typically that's been the route that they've gone. It's just allowing things to play out and not making those moves until you have to.
So a couple interesting comments. Order of the Blazing Horse. Trajan shown a history of being interested in players who are frequently available during the season too. That's a great point with all three of Tobias, Malik, and Tim Hardaway Jr. So something to keep in mind there, because a lot of the names we brought up, whether the big ones in LaVine and Brandon Ingram, often injured, even Lonzo Ball, right? Like obviously that's not a guy. Dante Exum is a guy that has come up in like some other conversations I've had and the little mock trade deadline thing that me and Wes are doing. I kind of like this name from Steven Suggs is Bruce Brown. I don't know what it would take. I do kind of, that one interests me just a little bit, just because the defense, he can do some secondary playmaking and all of that. If he can knock down catch and shoot shots, I know there's a history here with Detroit and all of that, whatever. I don't get into that stuff as much. Like other people may say he would never come back here, not be happy here. I don't know, but those are the type of names that I'm a little bit more interested in. Omari is doing something like that, where it's not going to take, a big move or whatever. I think I've soured a little bit on the just like take a really bad contract for draft capital. They already have like 12 second round picks. So unless they can take a bad contract with a first round pick, I don't know that I'm as into that as I was at one time, even though I'm the one that really like talked about how great of a job Trajan did putting that in position. Like, I don't know that 2 more second round picks really excite me if that player can't be in the rotation and help them down the stretch.
And that's the other wrinkle that we haven't really touched on too is, yes, the Pistons are the only team in the league who are positioned to be this third team to facilitate other deals. But to what extent are they going to want to facilitate other deals that help other teams get better and that they're also in that mix as well, right? Like what's the sweet spot asset wise that makes that more worthwhile if you're up at a team like a Miami or somewhere along those lines too. So I'm just very intrigued. I think a lot of it just comes down to how they do on this road trip, honestly. 5 games all against playoff teams, but yeah, they've got some big decisions to make pretty soon here.
Here's my thing. My last thing with like, I see people like really pushing Levine, and I'm with it. Like, you will not find somebody that will talk more highly of Zach Levine in the season he's having. He's been awesome. I just wouldn't make those moves. I wouldn't trade real assets for those guys. So again, if you can get Zach Levine for, not those guys, okay, sure. Like, you get in, you get Cade a second guy. There's a proof of concept that you can play with there, all of that. And then maybe one of those other guys plays into it. I don't know. I don't think the cap space situation is what I thought it was anyway. Like, I don't think they're a team that's going to be operating under the cap in general. So, and then, yeah, the BI contract is like that. Who knows there? Like, that'd be the other information I would want before that move. So I'm just more palatable to, I don't want to move these guys because I don't think I know the full story on them yet. And I would rather know that. I don't know. That's where I'm at with the young guys. I would stay pat unless you could just get one of those guys. Like, it's just low market value, you feel like, and you're able to bring him in on a steal. So that's my last thought, Omari, on this specifically.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much in the same place as well. Like any trade deadline, we're going to learn a lot about where this team is in the next few weeks. It's Trajan's first NBA trade deadline, so that makes it a special one for him as he kind of charts out the future of this team. But it's funny, like, we've for like years, it's always been like, the Pistons are going to do something at the trade deadline. And I was like, well, they have not been in this position going into a deadline in a while. So they're probably like, I don't think there's any objectively right or wrong answer other than,
sure,
if you're overcommitting financially to a second round team, then like that's the worst mistake you could probably make at this point of the rebuild. So that's really the only place I want to leave it. It's like, whatever you do, don't just mess up your future by overcommitting to a medium basketball team. Like, you've gotten this far, it's no need to jump the gun just because you're a 500 basketball team. Like, that's the, to me, that's the floor. That's not a reason to go and spend all your money.
Real quick, y'all, like that was a different GM real fast there. So, you're right. What's cool about this deadline is we can all have different opinions on it. That's what's fun, right? Like, that's what makes basketball fun. Like, hopefully we've been respectful presenting our opinions, try to be respectful of your guys' opinions. We appreciate you guys in the chat doing the same. And like, really appreciate everybody tuning in, joining, all of your comments, whether we were able to throw them up on the screen or not. I know we didn't get to as much as what I thought. The conversation got a little bit crazy, but really appreciate you. Okay. The private eye, I can't stop here. This is trauma. We've been beaten down so long and we are scared. I actually think it's not trauma because I'm not even, I've been around for 5 years. I actually think it's the other way. Isn't there more of like, oh, we let Chris Middleton go and he went and turned into this, or like we let guys go early and then look what they turned into? For me, it's the other way, where it's not a lack to me. Like, yeah, it's not him being passive. It's, do you really want to sell on guys yet? So, but yeah, Steven, you're right. I love this chat today. Lots of comments. Mr. Ray, always keep it respectful. We are Pistons fans. Much respect to all of you. Derek says, amazing show as always. Thanks, guys. So yeah, really, really good stuff. Appreciate all of you. And the great thing, Omari, is like, you're not going into a deadline where everybody's saying, you know what, they should really sell. They should really sell right now because they're not going anywhere. This is a compliment to where the team is at, that some people can be like, hey, let's push and go for it. And some other people are like, nah, let's play it out and see what we have. And that's really cool place to be, as opposed to everybody just arguing on how much do you sell or what was the return on that sell. So I really appreciate it from everybody. Have a lot of fun here on Sunday morning. And yeah, Omari, take it away.
Yeah, big thanks to everybody for joining us this morning, especially last minute, because it's funny. I texted Bryce and Wes last night. Like,
I didn't realize we hadn't confirmed yet. I was ready to go, and Omari, you text last night. You're like, "Are we recording tomorrow?" I was like,
"Yeah." I was like, "I'm ready to go," but
schedule.
Yeah, but I was like, we never actually locked in a time.
We did not
on Twitter, but we still got a huge crowd, and yeah, our next few episodes should be fun. I'll be on the road, next week, next time we record, so. Yeah, I mean, these are probably the last few truly exciting weeks of the season until we get to around April, and it'll be fun. So with that, I'll close this out. Big thanks to our audio producer Robin Chen, our editor in chief Nicole Avery Nichols, and a big thanks to Wes Davenport as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.